My girlfriend cheated on me for months with a friend I trusted. Now they're together, and I'm left wondering why she didn't just end it sooner instead of putting me through a year of misery. As the title suggests, I was with my girlfriend, who I'll call Jane, for about 3.5 years, and she ended up cheating on me with a guy I'd known for around 2 of those years. I got to know this guy. Let's call him Joe. Through a sport we both played. We became friends through our shared passion for it. At that point, I'd been dating Jane for just over a year. Jane often wanted to come along to my training sessions. I didn't mind at first, but after about a year, I started noticing some changes. She seemed to look at Joe in a different way, and her behavior around him started to shift. Now, Joe isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. He's honestly one of the most clueless and basic guys I've ever met. Meanwhile, I was providing Jane with safety, loyalty, and opportunities in our relationship. Unfortunately, I hit a rough patch. I left my job because of some pretty lousy treatment, and I ended up being unemployed for about 2 months. During that time, I discovered that Jane had been talking to Joe on social media and meeting up with him behind my back. He'd come by to pick her up from our place, and I never had a clue. She started hitting the gym with him, going on lunch dates, paddleboarding, watching sunsets together more than once, and even sending him intimate pictures of herself. I found out about the photos because she sent them to me and admitted she'd also sent them to him. I laid down a clear boundary. I told her, if you don't cut him off completely, we're done. But instead of respecting that, she turned off her location sharing, started ignoring me more, refused to go out or do anything with me, and wouldn't accept any kind of affection. No sex, no hand-holding, no kisses, no hugs. I could see where this was going. I was helping out with training some kids when she messaged me saying, "I'm going out with Joe. I'll be home before you finish." I got home at 7, but she never showed up. Her car was still in the driveway, so I knew he had picked her up. She had done the same thing the night before, but I hadn't realized what was going on. I stayed up, ready to break things off with her the second she walked through the door. But she never came home. Instead, she messaged me at 11:30 saying, "We need to talk." I knew exactly what that meant, so I asked her not to break up with me over social media. That night, I left the house, and I didn't know at the time, but about 30 minutes after I left, Jane and Joe went to my old house and spent the night there. Joe tried to justify it by claiming he was protecting her from me. But here's the thing. I'm a police officer. I've never hit or laid a finger on anyone. I don't do drugs, and I rarely drink. Joe claims he slept on the couch, which is absolute nonsense. For over 6 months, they were sneaking around behind my back. Just 3 weeks after we broke up, they were all over each other, posting on social media, and basically rubbing it in my face. I had both of them blocked before all this, but mutual friends filled me in. I eventually told those friends not to keep me updated. Joe even tried to reach out by asking our mutual friends to tell me to unblock him. I told him to get lost. He said he wanted to clear the air and make things right. But whenever he showed up to training, he couldn't even look me in the eye or speak to me, much less be alone near me. Clearly, Jane had checked out of the relationship long before any of this happened, but she kept saying she wanted to work on things and make an effort. We hardly ever argued, and there was no screaming or drama between us. But whenever I mentioned she needed to cut Joe off because their friendship seemed too close, she'd get defensive, saying stuff like, "You're just insecure, you're being petty, and you never let me have friends." Classic signs of a narcissist who's cheating, right? I guess what I'm really trying to figure out is this. If we kept having these talks about what we could both work on, and I was the only one actually making an effort, why did she put me through a year of uncertainty and misery? Why didn't she just leave me a year ago if she wanted to fool around with Joe? In the end, I asked her if we could meet in person. After being together for 3.5 years, I felt like we deserved to say goodbye face to face, right? She dodged me for 2 days, saying she didn't want me to hurt her or yell at her in person. I have never, not once in my life, done anything like that to anyone, and she knew it. I've always been straightforward and calm, even when things got rough. When she kept avoiding me, I finally had enough. I sent her a message saying, "Meet me at the park at exactly 7 p.m. If you don't show up, I'm leaving and blocking you on everything." She didn't reply. I got to the park at 6:30, waited for half an hour, and as soon as it hit 7, I texted her. I waited for 30 minutes. And you didn't show up. I'm putting the spare keys in the mailbox. Goodbye. Suddenly, she started blowing up my phone with messages saying, "You said around 7, not exactly at 7. I told her to read my message again and then blocked her on everything. I'd known Joe for 2 years through our training sessions. I had invited him into my home, we drank together, went out together, we did a lot together. And all that time, he was sneaking his way into my life. Now don't get me wrong, I realize now that Jane is a narcissist, and I was blind not to see it sooner. But deep down, from watching the way those two interacted, I always had a feeling something like this would happen. I just knew. Of course, I'm feeling upset and betrayed right now. It's only been a month, and it sucks. I've heard all the usual things like, "You'll be fine without her," and I know I will be. But I never, not in a million years, could have imagined doing something like that to anyone. Now Joe is spreading rumors, telling everyone that I used to beat her, and that I have a drinking problem. But when he's right in front of me, he's too scared to even talk. It's obvious that she's 90% of the problem, and he's maybe 10%. But it just blows my mind how people can act like this, especially toward their partner and supposed best friend. I've got more details if you need them, but that's the gist of it. Sorry if the structure's a bit off. I'm feeling pretty emotional right now. What I really want to know is this. Why didn't she just break it off earlier? Why make me sit around, wondering where she was and why she couldn't respect a simple boundary to drop just one person for the sake of our relationship? Why ignore me mentally and physically for so long? Why make me feel like I was doing everything wrong, like I was useless and couldn't do anything right? Why make the one person you're supposed to love feel like they're a burden and the worst person ever?